remember that sunny morning in New York as if it was yesterday. I, Cindy, a renowned executive, was heading to my office. The streets were pulsing with the vibrant rhythm of daily life, reflecting the dynamism of my career. My office, located in an imposing building in the financial district, was a testament to my professional success. Despite my demanding schedule, I always found time for my health and my 18-year-old son, Jackson, who was as energetic and creative as they come. Oh, how I cherished those moments with him. I'd always been an active person, mindful of my health. But lately, something felt off. Almost every day, especially at night, I began experiencing unusual fatigue and a persistent dry cough. At first, I chalked it up to work stress, you know how it is. As days went by, these symptoms not only persisted but worsened. I noticed my usual energy dwindling, even small tasks left me surprisingly exhausted. It was as if my body was betraying me, a feeling I'm sure many of us in our 60s can relate to. Then came a mild but constant chest pain, accompanied by an unexplainable loss of appetite. These unusual signs worried me, and I decided to consult a doctor. It had been a while since my last checkup, what with the company's growth keeping me busy this past year. So, with a mix of anxiety and hope that it wasn't anything serious, I went to the clinic. Little did I know that this visit would turn my world upside down. After a series of tests and examinations, the doctor sat in front of me with a concerned expression. My heart sank as he carefully explained that they found something in the results that needed further investigation. He referred me to an oncologist, and in that moment, my body froze. Everything around me seemed to move in slow motion, while scenes from my entire life raced through my mind at lightning speed. This can't be happening, I thought, my mind reeling with disbelief. The doctor patiently tried to calm me down, assuring me that Dr. Wilson was waiting and would explain everything, helping me in the best way possible. He emphasized Dr. Wilson's vast experience, but his words felt distant, as if I was hearing them through a fog. As I walked to the next room, I felt like I was in a dream, or rather, a nightmare. The atmosphere in the oncologist's office was solemn, matching the heaviness in my heart. I waited for Dr. Wilson's words, my emotions a tumultuous mix of anxiety and hope. With a compassionate expression, Dr. Wilson began to explain the situation. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had lung cancer, and it was at an advanced stage. He didn't sugarcoat it, telling me it was a serious condition with challenges ahead. In that moment, I felt my world crumbling around me. How could this happen to me? I had always taken care of myself, and now, at a time when I should be enjoying the fruits of my labor, I was facing the fight of my life. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. I never expected this, I whispered, my voice trembling with shock and fear. I've always taken care of my health. How could this happen? Dr. Wilson looked at me with compassionate eyes. He understood how shocking this news was, he said. Unfortunately, cancer often doesn't show clear signs until it's advanced. But there was still hope, he assured me. We had treatment options to discuss. He wanted to find the best path forward for me. Dr. Wilson continued, trying to give me hope. He explained how cancer treatment had advanced significantly, with new therapies showing meaningful results. He was there to support all my decisions and ensure I received the best possible care. His words were like a lifeline in a stormy sea of emotions. I absorbed his words, feeling a mix of fear and determination. What do we do now? I asked, a new resolve in my voice. How do we start this fight? Dr. Wilson suggested we start with a detailed discussion of my treatment options. He explained that each case was unique, and we'd personalize the plan to my specific needs. As I headed home, I prepared myself to break the news to Jackson and Justin, my husband, in our cozy living room, surrounded by happy family memories. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening. Jackson, my brave boy, held back tears, trying to be strong for me. Justin hugged me tightly, promising unconditional support. In the days that followed, I found myself contemplating the impact of this news on my life and career. I knew I needed to balance treatment with my responsibilities, but I was determined to stay strong for my family. And so began a new chapter of challenges and triumphs. As my treatment intensified, subtle but profound changes crept into our home. Since the diagnosis, our daily routine had become a joint effort between my husband and son. Every morning was carefully organized to ensure all my needs were met. Justin took charge of managing my medications, making sure I took them as prescribed. He accompanied me to countless medical consultations and chemotherapy sessions. Meanwhile, Jackson took on the task of preparing balanced, easy-to-digest meals, adapting to the changes in my taste and appetite. It reminded me of when I used to cook for him when he was little, how the tables had turned. Justin was attentive even during the night, always ready to help me move around the house or offer emotional support. Their love and care wrapped around me like a warm blanket, giving me strength I didn't know I had. Even during the most challenging moments, I persevered. Despite the initial care, as time passed and the caregiving intensified, I noticed the atmosphere in our home starting to shift. Justin and Jackson, who had once been pillars of strength and support, began to hesitate when faced with my growing needs. It broke my heart. Simple requests, like a glass of water or a short walk in the garden, were met with tired sighs or sometimes ignored altogether. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of guilt and helplessness. I observed my family's quiet resistance with a mix of sadness and understanding. I knew it wasn't easy for them either, but oh, how I longed for their unwavering support. One particularly challenging morning, when I needed to go to the hospital for chemotherapy, the house was enveloped in a heavy silence. It felt like a thick fog had settled over our once cheerful home. Justin was still in bed, showing no signs of getting up. I called up to him from downstairs, asking if he'd forgotten about my appointment. His response felt like a dagger to my heart. In a hoarse voice, he suggested I take a taxi. He said he was too tired and reminded me that I had the contact for the neighborhood taxi cooperative in my phone. I felt a wave of sadness and loneliness wash over me, but I tried to respond calmly and patiently. I told him I understood that he needed rest, all while hiding my disappointment. As I waited for the taxi, my mind was a whirlwind of troubled thoughts. Was I asking too much of them? Had my illness become an unbearable burden? When the taxi arrived, the driver was a kind gentleman who immediately noticed my frailty. With an encouraging smile, he assured me he'd take good care of me. I felt an unexpected sense of relief in the presence of this stranger. It was a small kindness, but it meant the world to me at that moment. After finishing my session at the hospital, I returned home. Sitting in our spacious living room, I gazed out the large windows at the twilight. The soft evening light contrasted sharply with the heaviness I felt in my heart. I knew it was time to confront the growing distance between me and my family. When Justin and Jackson joined me in the living room, I took a deep breath, gathering courage to start this difficult conversation. With a trembling voice but a determined tone, I began, "I remember when this room was always filled with laughter and plans for the future." I paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. But since my diagnosis, everything feels different. It seems I've become a burden to you both. I watched as Justin sat uncomfortably on the sofa, avoiding eye contact. His voice, revealing a fatigue that went beyond the physical, told me that it wasn't so simple, that everyone was trying to cope in their own way. Jackson, sitting next to his father, looked uneasy. His eyes were filled with sadness and discomfort. He mumbled that it was difficult, that he wanted to help but sometimes didn't know how. I felt a mix of understanding and determination as I suggested, what if we sought outside help? We could hire someone to assist with daily tasks and medical consultations. It might lighten the load for all of us. Justin sighed and responded with indifference, saying if I thought it would help. His lack of empathy made it clear he didn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation. Despite my disappointment in Justin's reaction, I kept my focus on finding a solution. I told them I'd contact the hospital tomorrow to see if they could recommend someone, emphasizing our need for an experienced person to help us on this journey. Jackson thought for a moment and agreed it was a good idea. I felt a glimmer of hope, managing a faint smile. I was determined to keep our family together despite the challenges. My resilient spirit and ability to find practical solutions to difficult problems had always guided me, and I wasn't about to let that change now. A few days later, the new nurse I hired arrived and began caring for me. He was a specialist in cancer patients and knew exactly how to handle these situations. Sitting in the living room, I could feel the tension between Justin and me. I observed my husband, clearly uncomfortable with the nurse's presence. "Justin, you seem uncomfortable with the nurse. Is something worrying you?" I asked. Justin looked at me hesitantly. He admitted he wasn't feeling good about it, that it felt strange having another man taking care of me. I felt a pang in my heart as Justin confessed he felt like he was being replaced. I tried to calm him down, explaining that the nurse was only here to help with my health, that it wasn't personal. I reminded him that I especially needed the nurse on chemotherapy days. Then I added, my voice soft but firm, "If you feel capable of taking on that care, we can discuss it." Justin's response was a mix of frustration and worry. He said it wasn't just about taking care of me, but about feeling useful. He felt he wasn't needed anymore. I tried to reassure him, my words coming out in a rush. "You are important, Justin. You always have been. But the nurse has specialized experience with cancer patients. He's here to help us, not to replace you." The conversation grew tenser as Justin expressed his discontent. He told me, clearly agitated, that I was relying too much on others and that I should try to be more independent. I felt a surge of frustration. "Justin," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "there are days when I can barely move because of the chemotherapy. This isn't about wanting to be independent or not." I was trying to make him understand the severity of my condition, but it felt like my words were hitting a brick wall. Unable to accept the situation, Justin suddenly stood up and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the house, leaving a hollow feeling in my chest. Later, a call from my mother-in-law only heightened the tension. She told me it wasn't appropriate or respectful to have a man taking care of me. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "I understand your concerns," I told her, my voice calm despite the turmoil inside me. "But my health is the priority right now. He's a qualified professional, and he's here to help." That night, as I lay in bed, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I pondered how my illness was affecting those around me. I knew I needed to face these delicate issues with Justin, but the prospect filled me with dread. It felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying to balance my needs with the feelings of my family. The weight of it all pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I thought to myself, we need to find a middle ground. I was determined to maintain peace and understanding in our family, despite the challenges we faced. As I continued my treatment, I noticed my cancer wasn't getting worse. But that good news wasn't enough to keep harmony in our home. A week after a tense conversation with Justin, things seemed to return to normal. My treatment was progressing without issues. But then, returning from a chemotherapy session, an unexpected sight awaited me. A moving truck was parked in front of our house. My heart sank as I entered and found Justin and Jackson packing their belongings. Justin, avoiding my gaze, told me they were going to stay at his mother's house for a while. A wave of sadness and frustration washed over me, but I was too exhausted from the treatment to express my feelings fully. I looked at Jackson, my voice weak as I asked if he wanted to go too, telling him he could make his own decision. The coldness in Jackson's expression as he answered felt like a knife twisting in my heart. He said it was too difficult to stay here and that he wanted to be with his dad. Jackson's words confirmed my worst fears of being unwanted and abandoned. It was like a physical blow. After Justin and Jackson left, the house that was once full of life and love now echoed with a melancholic silence. It felt like all the warmth had been sucked out of the rooms. As I struggled to accept this new reality, an unexpected knock came at my door. It was my cousin Amy, who had heard about recent events. Amy's strong embrace and her words of support were like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. She told me she couldn't let me face this alone. Amy, with her strong spirit and warm heart, had always shared a special bond with me. Her presence was like a ray of sunshine breaking through dark clouds. With a mix of relief and sorrow, I confided in Amy about the challenges I was facing. Through my tears, I told her they had left when I needed them most. Amy listened carefully, her expression a mix of concern and anger. She couldn't believe what had happened, she said, but assured me I wasn't alone. With determination in her voice, Amy declared she would stay with me during this period and we would get through this together. Her words were like a balm to my wounded soul. In the days that followed, Amy became a constant comforting presence in my home. She helped with daily chores, accompanied me to doctor's appointments, and provided the companionship I so desperately needed. I remember telling her, my voice thick with emotion, "Amy, you've always been more than a cousin to me. You're a true friend." With Amy by my side, I felt a glimmer of strength to face the challenges of my condition. It was like having a sturdy cane to lean on during a difficult hike. The house, which had felt empty and cold, slowly began to regain some human warmth. It was as if Amy's presence was thawing out the frozen atmosphere Justin and Jackson had left behind. The deep pain of Justin and Jackson's departure was still there, a constant ache in my heart, but Amy's presence brought new hope and strength for me to continue on the path to recovery. Amy had always been a symbol of resilience and strength to me. These qualities were forged by challenging circumstances in her own life, like steel tempered in fire. She had been a widow for several years, having lost her husband in a tragic car accident when her 2 children were still young. It was a pain I couldn't even begin to imagine. Since then, Amy had tirelessly dedicated herself to raising her children alone, balancing the responsibilities of a single mother with several demanding jobs. She was like a juggler, keeping multiple balls in the air without dropping a single one. Despite the daily challenges, Amy never allowed the difficulties to shake her optimistic spirit. She was like a lighthouse, standing firm against the storms of life. She raised her children with love and dedication, instilling values of strength and compassion. Despite their father's absence, she took pride in seeing them grow up healthy and happy. When Amy heard about my situation, she reached out without hesitation. She saw me not just as a cousin, but as a sister of the heart. Dividing her time between work, caring for her children, and helping me, Amy was the epitome of altruism and generosity. She was like a well that never ran dry, always having more to give. As she prepared a meal for me one day, Amy said, "You'd do the same for me, Cindy. We're family. We need to support each other, especially during tough times." She cared for me with the same tenderness and attention she devoted to her children, balancing hospital visits and chemotherapy sessions with her kids' school activities and needs. It was like watching a master choreographer at work. At night, after putting her children to bed, Amy would rush to my house. She'd sit beside me, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. One evening, she reflected, "Cindy, life sometimes tests us in unexpected ways. Losing my husband was devastating, but it taught me to cherish every moment and be strong for my kids." I listened carefully, finding inspiration in Amy's strength. It was like she was passing on a torch of resilience to me. "You're incredible, Amy," I marveled. "I don't know how you manage it all." Amy smiled, hiding her fatigue but radiating hope. "We women are made of special stuff, Cindy. We have the ability to carry the world on our shoulders and still keep moving forward." The next day, feeling the painful absence of Justin and Jackson, I decided to call them, hoping to reconnect and express my feelings. My heart was pounding as I picked up the phone, unsure of what to expect. With a heavy heart, I dialed Justin's number. My voice trembled as I tried to hide my sorrow, asking him if they were okay and telling him how much I missed them. Justin's response was like a dagger to my heart, his tone cold and indifferent. He told me they were fine, adapting to their new life, and that I shouldn't worry about them. His words lacked the concern and affection I so desperately craved. It felt like talking to a stranger, not the man I'd shared my life with for so many years. I couldn't help but plead with him, my voice thick with emotion. I told him I did worry, that I needed them, especially now. Justin's reply was like a bucket of cold water. He acknowledged it was difficult for me but insisted everyone had their own lives and they couldn't stay stuck in this situation. He abruptly ended the conversation, leaving me holding the phone, tears welling up in my eyes. I felt like a discarded newspaper, no longer of use or interest to them. The next day, gathering what little strength I had left, I tried again. This time, I called Jackson. My heart ached as I spoke to him, telling him how much I needed and missed him. Jackson's response, while not as harsh as Justin's, still held a similar resolve. He told me he liked being with his dad, away from the constant reminder of my illness. His admission that he didn't want to come back felt like a physical blow. It was as if my own child was confirming my worst fears, that I had become a burden they wanted to escape from. As I hung up the phone, a wave of abandonment and helplessness washed over me. I felt like a ship lost at sea, with no lighthouse in sight. Amy, sensing my distress, came to me. Her words were like a warm blanket on a cold night. She assured me that they didn't know what they were losing, that I was an incredibly strong and brave woman. She promised to stay by my side, her presence a beacon of hope in my darkest hour. It was then that I realized, sometimes family isn't just about blood, it's about who stands by you when the storms of life hit. Those conversations left me feeling devastated. As the days passed, it became clearer that Justin and Jackson had chosen to distance themselves from me, leaving me to fight this illness alone. Amy became my unwavering source of support. Noticing how down I was about Justin and Jackson, she decided to bring a little more joy into my life. One day, she brought her 2 children, Bella and Levi, to spend the afternoon with me. Amy told me how excited the kids were to see me, and that she wanted me to know I had family here with them too. I felt my heart warm at the presence of the children. Bella and Levi filled the house with laughter and energy, reminding me of happier times when Jackson was young. For a few hours, I was able to forget my sorrows and immerse myself in the simple joy of being with family. It was like a ray of sunshine breaking through dark clouds. Despite her modest life, Amy never let difficulties defeat her. She told me about going back to school. With pride in her voice, she explained how she'd decided to return to studying after her kids had grown a bit. She was studying nursing on a scholarship. It was tough, she admitted, but she knew it was worth it. Her voice was full of hope and determination, inspiring me. Motivated by Amy, I started to open my heart to new experiences. She took me for a walk in the local park, something I hadn't done in months. Sitting on a bench, watching children play, I felt a sense of peace and gratitude wash over me. With tears of joy in my eyes, I thanked Amy for bringing me there, confessing I hadn't realized how much I needed it. Amy smiled and took my hand. She told me sometimes all we need is a bit of fresh air and good company, and that I'd always have that with her. After weeks of small joys and reconnecting with life, I felt like I was regaining my vitality. But life, in its unpredictability, had other plans. During a routine checkup, the doctor's worried expression made me anticipate the news I had been dreading. With a voice full of professionalism and empathy, he informed me that my cancer, which had seemed to be retreating, was now showing signs of strengthening. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. But I was feeling better, I protested, my voice barely a whisper. I asked, my voice a mix of disbelief and fear, how can this be happening? The doctor explained that cancer was unpredictable and complex. He told me we'd need to adjust the treatment and consider new approaches, offering not just a medical plan but emotional support too. Back home, I shared the news with Amy in the kitchen where we'd had so many conversations. Amy took my hands in hers, her voice firm but her eyes betraying her worry. She promised we'd get through this together, no matter how difficult it might be. Her unwavering support was like a lifeline, but I still felt a wave of despair washing over me. I was just starting to have hope again, Amy, I confessed, tears streaming down my face. Now it feels like everything is crumbling. In the days that followed, I found myself pondering the unfairness of life. Despite all my efforts and the joy I'd recently rediscovered, my illness refused to yield. Why me? I asked myself, lost in thought. It was a question I'd asked countless times before, but never found an answer to. Amy tried to comfort me. She reminded me that life isn't always fair, but even in the darkest moments, there are streaks of light. She told me I was that streak of light for her and everyone who knew me. Her words were like a warm embrace, trying to infuse me with strength. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, I discovered a strength within me I didn't know I had. I decided to keep fighting, not just for myself, but for those who loved me and whom I loved. One afternoon, encouraged by Amy, I decided to call Justin. I needed to tell him about the recent decline in my health, hoping it might bring about a change in his attitude. With trembling hands, I dialed his number, feeling each beat of my heart. "Justin," I began hesitantly, "I need to talk to you about what the doctors said." The voice on the other end was cold and distant. Justin interrupted me, asking what I wanted now, saying he and Jackson were busy with their lives. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But my cancer has gotten worse. I thought you should know." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before Justin responded. His words cut through me like a knife. He told me that this news changed nothing for them. He'd made his decision, and he and Jackson were better off now, away from all the negativity. He said my illness was no longer their responsibility. I felt as if a dagger had pierced my heart. "Justin, please don't talk like that," I pleaded, my voice trembling with pain and desperation. "I'm still your wife, the mother of your child." But Justin's voice remained cold and final. He informed me he was sending divorce papers, believing it was best for everyone to move on. Tears flooded my eyes as I clung to one last hope. "Can't we try to work this out for Jackson's sake?" I begged. Justin's response was swift and merciless. He'd made up his mind, and Jackson agreed it was for the best. He told me it was time to leave them in peace and hung up without another word. As I put down the phone, I felt an immense emptiness. Amy, who had been by my side during the call, wrapped me in a tight embrace. She tried to comfort me, assuring me I wasn't alone and that she'd be there no matter what. But her words seemed insufficient to soothe the deep pain I was feeling. I realized the road ahead would be lonely and difficult. Justin's rejection and coldness, following the news of my worsening health, plunged me into a spiral of despair. I wondered how the man I'd shared so many years with, the father of my child, could distance himself so completely when I was at my most vulnerable. One night, alone with my thoughts, I found myself flipping through photo albums. The images of smiles and shared moments with Justin and Jackson now seemed to belong to another life entirely. With each turn of a page, a tear fell, marking the photographs with droplets of a story that was falling apart. The day the divorce papers arrived, I felt a mix of pain and release. Holding the envelope in my hands, I reflected on how years of family dedication were now crumbling into sheets of paper. Enough suffering, I told myself, trying to summon strength I wasn't sure I possessed anymore. I told myself it was time to hold my head high and face life as it was. My words felt hollow, but I clung to them like a lifeline. Amy, who had been observing my transformation, approached me. She assured me I was stronger than I thought, promising to walk with me every step of the way. While sorting through my belongings, Amy discovered an old notebook. It was my wish list, filled with simple things I'd always wanted to do but never found the time for. "Cindy, look what I found," Amy exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. She suggested we start fulfilling some of these wishes. I smiled in surprise, having forgotten about these desires. "They're such simple things," I mused, "but they mean so much to me." The first wish on the list was to visit a local garden. Amy arranged the visit, and we spent an afternoon surrounded by flowers and plants. I savored each scent, admired every color, feeling a joy I had forgotten existed. "I can't believe something so simple can be so beautiful," I said, my face radiating pure happiness. As we continued to browse through the wish list, a new idea emerged. Amy pointed out another wish, spending a day at the beach, feeling the sand and the sea. "That sounds wonderful," I exclaimed, a spark of enthusiasm igniting within me. I smiled, remembering this old wish. "I can't remember the last time I went to the beach," I admitted. "It would be really lovely." The following weekend, Amy planned a trip to the nearest beach. Sitting on the sand, I closed my eyes, feeling the sea breeze and listening to the sound of the waves. "It's so peaceful here," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for bringing me here, Amy." Another item on the list was to watch a spectacular sunrise. Amy, always eager to make my wishes come true, planned an early morning walk. "We're going to get up very early tomorrow," she promised. "You're going to see the most beautiful sunrise of your life." The next day, while it was still dark before dawn, we found the perfect spot to watch the spectacle. As the sun rose on the horizon, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. "I'd forgotten how wonderful it is to see the start of a new day," I said, tears of joy welling up in my eyes. It was as if the rising sun was a metaphor for my own life, a new beginning after the darkness. As we continued to look through the notebook, Amy pointed out another wish, learning to dance salsa. "Cindy, that's amazing," she exclaimed. I laughed, a bit hesitant. "I can't dance, Amy," I protested. "And with my health condition." My voice trailed off, doubt creeping in. But Amy, with her encouraging smile, interrupted me. She assured me it would be okay, that the important thing was to have fun. She suggested finding a beginner's class, certain I'd love it. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself nodding in agreement. Over the next few weeks, Amy and I attended salsa classes. At first, I was anxious, my body stiff with uncertainty. But soon, I found myself surrendering to the music and rhythm. "I never thought I could do something like this," I said after one class, breathless but beaming. It was as if my body remembered a joy it had long forgotten. Amy hugged me, sharing in my joy. She reminded me that every day was a new opportunity, and she was there to live all those days with me, her beloved cousin. As time passed, my relationship with Amy continued to evolve. She spent more and more time taking care of me as my health, unfortunately, began to decline. The moments of joy and achievement brought by the wish list were now accompanied by periods of weakness and fatigue. They served as constant reminders of the battle I was fighting against cancer. I began to reflect on my company, a thriving business I had built with years of dedication and passion. Known for its success and innovation, it had always attracted interest from buyers. Now, with my health deteriorating, I started to seriously consider the idea of selling. It was a bittersweet thought, like closing a cherished chapter of my life. One quiet afternoon, sitting in my favorite armchair, I broached the subject with Amy. I was sitting with Amy in the garden when I broached the subject. "Amy, I've been thinking about my company," I said, gazing thoughtfully at the horizon. "I've received several buyout offers over the years. Maybe it's time to accept one of them." Amy looked at me, understanding the depth of this decision. She acknowledged how much of myself I'd poured into the business, but agreed it might be a good idea given everything that was happening. "One less thing to worry about," she said. I nodded in agreement. "You're right," I said. "I don't know when, or if, I'll ever be able to return and focus 100% on the company again. And the money from the sale could ensure my financial stability for many years to come." In the days that followed, I began meeting with advisors and potential buyers. Amy was always by my side, offering support as I arranged everything from home. After several meetings and negotiations, I finally decided to sell the company to a buyer who shared my vision and work ethic. It felt like finding a worthy successor for my life's work. When the sale was complete, I felt a mix of relief and nostalgia. "Part of me will always be in that company," I told Amy, my voice tinged with emotion. "But now I can focus on my health and enjoy the time I have left." Amy took my hand and assured me I'd made the right decision. "It was time to take care of myself," she said. A few weeks after the sale, I received an unexpected call. It was Justin, his tone unusually kind. He said he and Jackson were thinking of visiting me, that they missed me. His voice carried a sweetness that was clearly forced. Surprised by the sudden change in attitude, I accepted the visit but kept my guard up. I knew this wasn't normal. "It'll be nice to see you," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. When Justin and Jackson arrived, I immediately noticed the difference in their behavior. They were extremely attentive and affectionate, a stark contrast to the coldness and distance of the past few months. As I watched them, a mix of emotions swirled within me: hope, suspicion, and a deep, aching sadness for what we had lost. Jackson approached me, his expression unreadable. He said he was truly sorry for everything and that he had wanted to be there for me. I couldn't fully decipher the emotions behind his words. Amy, who had been observing this scene, felt a sense of distrust. Later, she confided her concerns to me. She found it strange that they had changed their attitude so suddenly, right after the company sale. I sighed, a look of understanding crossing my face. "I know, Amy," I said. "It's hard not to see this as interest in the sale money. But I want to see how this plays out. I want to see how far this will go." In the days that followed, Justin and Jackson visited frequently, always showing excessive concern and interest in my financial situation. During one such visit, Justin brought up the topic of my financial future. With a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he suggested I should think about managing my money, perhaps investing or including them in my will for safety. I pretended to consider his proposal, responding that it was a good idea and I'd think about it. Internally, I was fully aware of their intentions. Despite the pain of recognizing Justin and Jackson's selfish interests, I remained firm and clear in my decisions. One cold morning, I woke up feeling deeply weakened, with an incessant cough that seemed to drain my last bit of strength. Amy, realizing the gravity of the situation, acted quickly. She called an ambulance while comforting me with gentle words and affectionate gestures. At the hospital, the doctors did everything they could to stabilize me, but my condition was critical. Amy stayed by my side, holding my hand and whispering words of encouragement, even though her heart was heavy with the fear of losing her beloved cousin. The doctor entered the room with a serious but kind expression. He carefully chose his words as he explained that they were doing everything they could, but my body was responding less to the treatment. I looked at the doctor with understanding in my gaze. "I know," I whispered weakly. "I can feel it." Amy observed my emotions, a mix of pain and admiration for my strength evident on her face. In a moment of clarity, I asked Amy, my voice weak but full of intention, to find a special envelope at home. I explained that I had written a letter to be read when the time came, and I wanted her to read it with Justin and Jackson. It was important to me, I emphasized. "Of course, Cindy," Amy promised, fighting back tears. "I'll do exactly as you ask."
As night fell, Cindy seemed to be slipping further away. Her breathing grew shallower with each passing moment. Amy, sitting by her side, continued talking, reminiscing about the happy times they had shared. In the early hours of the morning, as the moon shone majestically outside, Cindy finally passed away with a serenity that contrasted the battle she had faced. Though devastated by the loss, Amy felt a wave of gratitude for being able to stay by Cindy's side until the very end. After Cindy's death, Amy left the hospital room visibly shaken, tears freely streaming down her face. In the hallway, she encountered Justin, who was waiting with a somber expression. Unable to contain her frustration and sadness, Amy approached him. "Justin, you need to hear this," Amy said, her voice trembling with emotion. She told him that Cindy had deserved so much more from him and Jackson. While they were living their lives as if nothing was happening, Cindy had spent terrifying moments fighting alone. Surprised by Amy's frankness, Justin tried to interrupt, but Amy continued, her words flowing like an avalanche of pent-up emotions. "No, now it's your turn to listen," she insisted. Amy explained that Cindy had been spending her final days. All she had wanted was a little love and consideration from her family. But now it was too late for regrets. Amy took a deep breath, trying to control her emotions. She said she was going to get a letter Cindy had written. Cindy had wanted her to read it with Justin and Jackson. Amy told Justin this would be the last time they'd see each other. She was doing this out of respect for Cindy, not for them. Justin remained silent, stunned by Amy's words and the weight of reality. It seemed he was realizing the magnitude of his neglect for the first time. Amy left with determination to fulfill Cindy's last wish. Despite the pain and sense of loss, she knew that respecting Cindy's memory was the most important thing at this moment. 3 days later, Amy received a call from a lawyer. It was the attorney Cindy had previously entrusted with handling her legal affairs. "Mrs. Amy, this is Johnson, Cindy's attorney," he said in a calm, respectful tone. He explained that Cindy had given him instructions for specific procedures after her passing. One of these was to read a letter she had left in the presence of Justin and Jackson. He said they needed to decide on a location for this. Still affected by the loss of Cindy, Amy agreed to find a neutral and quiet place to read the letter. "I think Cindy's house would be the most suitable place," Amy suggested. She added that Cindy loved that place, and it would be like she was there with them. Johnson agreed with the suggestion and offered to arrange the meeting. He said he would contact Justin and Jackson about the date and time. This would be a private meeting, he emphasized, with only those necessary to fulfill Cindy's last wishes in attendance. On the appointed day, Amy, Justin, Jackson, and Johnson gathered in the living room of Cindy's house. It was a place filled with memories and emotions. The atmosphere was charged with feelings, each person processing the loss in their own way. Amy firmly grasped the envelope and began to read the letter. "If you're reading this letter, it means I'm no longer with you," the letter began. "I'm writing these words with a heart full of love, but also with the pain of abandonment I felt. My cancer diagnosis was one of the most challenging moments of my life. And Justin and Jackson, your absence left a deep wound in my soul. I never imagined feeling so alone when I needed my family's love and support the most. However, even in those dark days, I found light and hope through the unconditional love of Amy and her lovely children. Amy, you were more than a cousin to me. You were my savior, my sister of the heart. You and your children supported me when I was about to fall. You fulfilled my last wishes with nothing but love and compassion. There are no words to express my gratitude for everything you've done for me. Regarding legal matters, I made important decisions before my departure under the guidance of my lawyer. After filing for divorce, I reviewed my will. As our marriage was under a complete separation of property regime, everything I own, including our house and other assets, is my exclusive property," the letter continued. Cindy had decided to leave her entire estate to Amy and her children as a gesture of gratitude and to ensure their safe and prosperous future. She expressed that while she still loved Justin and Jackson, she felt Amy and her children were most deserving of what she had to offer. Addressing Jackson directly, Cindy wrote that despite the path they had chosen, he would always have her forgiveness. She emphasized the importance of valuing things in life and learning to fight for them. Cindy expressed her hope that Jackson would find his way and realize the importance of being present for those he loved. To Amy, Cindy's last wish was for her to finish her nursing course and continue helping others as she had helped Cindy. She praised Amy's generous heart and dedication as an example for all of them. Cindy concluded by saying she was proud that her legacy would be used to support Amy and her children's dreams. After reading Cindy's letter, Amy was visibly moved. Tears streamed freely down her face as she held the paper with trembling hands. She was touched by the depth of love and gratitude Cindy had expressed for her and her children. "She was more than a cousin to me," Amy said between sobs. "She was a sister, a friend. I just wanted to be there for her." Amy felt Cindy's absence more than ever. Justin, on the other hand, seemed confused and stunned by Cindy's decision. He couldn't hide his disappointment at not being included in the inheritance. "I don't understand why she left everything to Amy," he said, his voice a mix of surprise and indignation. "What will happen to me and Jackson now?" Jackson, however, showed a different reaction. Hearing his mother's words, he bowed his head, clearly moved and filled with regret. "I really abandoned Mom when she needed me the most," he mumbled, his voice choked with emotion. Cindy's words seemed to have sparked a deep reflection in Jackson. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said softly, tears beginning to form in his eyes. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you." Amy, observing Jackson's reaction, felt a pang of compassion for the young man. She approached him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Your mother loved you, Jackson," Amy said gently. "She only wanted the best for you. Now you have a chance to honor her memory." Johnson quietly observed the scene, respecting the family's moment of grief and reflection. He offered his professional support, saying he was available if they needed any additional guidance on legal procedures. On a peaceful afternoon, as the sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, Amy walked slowly through the cemetery, carrying a beautiful bouquet of flowers. She stopped in front of Cindy's grave, where the words on the headstone still shone as if new, even years later. Amy knelt softly, placing the flowers beside the headstone. "Cindy, so much has happened since you left us," she began, her voice filled with emotion. "I wanted you to know that I graduated from nursing school. Every day during that course, I thought of you and felt the strength you gave me." She paused for a moment, swallowing the lump in her throat. "And about Jackson, Cindy, he's really changed. He started studying, worked hard, and moved forward in life. He got married and even had a daughter. Can you believe it? They named her Cindy in your honor." Amy smiled through her tears. "You left a mark on him, Cindy. Your letter, your last words, changed his life. He finally understood what truly matters." She gazed at the horizon, thinking about Cindy's ex-husband. "As for Justin, we haven't heard from him since then. It seems he went his own way, and I've heard he's now begging on the streets. He never had to work before, so when you were gone, he ran out of options. Jackson cut ties with him too. But wherever he is, I hope he's found some peace." Amy stood up, looking at the grave with a gaze full of love and gratitude. "You're always in our hearts, Cindy. Your courage, love, and strength live on in each of us. Thank you for everything." She walked away slowly, leaving the cemetery, but carrying Cindy's memories and legacy in her heart. Life continued, and Amy knew that in some way, Cindy was still with them, guiding and inspiring them.